Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Mind Movement Health Podcast. I'm your host, Kate Boyle, and today, before we dive into this week's episode, just a shout out to our sponsor, Paleo Valley. Now, if you've been looking to add in a little bit extra to your diet and nutrition just to help you out with your health, then look no further than Paleo Valley. As I mentioned before, I take their electrolytes, their vitamin C, their turmeric, their protein powder, and all their products are organic and amazing. To grab your discount, head on over to the podcast show notes and click the link. All right, this week on the podcast, we are chatting about why healthy people still sometimes get sick. And I want to start today's episode with a question. Have you ever looked at someone who seems incredibly healthy and then been shocked to hear that they've been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition or cancer or another chronic illness that you just didn't think was possible? Or maybe that person is you. Maybe you spent years eating well, exercising, trying to get enough sleep, thinking that you were looking after yourself, and then one day your body threw you a curveball that you really weren't expecting. When this happens, people think to themselves the same heartbreaking question, what did I do wrong? As a nutritionist, Pilates instructor, and a breathwork facilitator, I've had countless conversations with women who feel guilty because they believe they somehow failed at being healthy, and they can't understand how they developed this autoimmune condition because they were trying to tick all those boxes, exercise a lot, eat super clean, make sure I get to bed early enough, and all of these things, and they still developed that autoimmune condition. But today I want to challenge that idea because while food and exercise matter enormously, they absolutely do, and they help reduce the risk of disease, they're only just a part of the bigger picture. Health is much bigger than just what we're eating and if we're working out. Today, we're going to be chatting about and exploring why healthy people can still get sick, what modern research tells us about the many influences on our health, and perhaps most importantly, how we can stop chasing perfection, but instead focus on building health resilience. So resilience within the body in all different areas that's going to help protect us against disease. Because health isn't about controlling every tiny little thing. Again, that's just not possible. It's about supporting our bodies in ways that we can to help live a long, healthy, vibrant life. Now, one of the reasons health advice can feel confusing is because we definitely, as humans, like to simplify answers. If someone develops heart disease, we say, oh, they must have had a poor diet. If someone develops osteoporosis, we say, oh, they obviously didn't do any weight training. If someone develops type 2 diabetes, they had too much sugar. And biology, unfortunately, is really not simple. Our bodies are influenced by hundreds of interconnecting factors. Think of health like baking a cake. We need lots of different ingredients. Nutrition may be one ingredient, exercise is another, our sleep, stress, relationships, genetics, our environment, hormones, trauma, our purpose, and our connections or our level of isolation. That's all these different ingredients that come together to influence our health. And that's why when you see two people that you think are living similar lifestyles, they can have very different health outcomes. Now, I want to talk a little bit about genetics and environment. You may have heard the phrase, genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. And there's definitely a lot of truth in that. Lifestyle influences our health, 100%. We definitely can't deny that, But genetics do matter as well. Some people may inherit a higher risk of a certain cancer by the genes that they have. Others may have inherited stronger protective genes. And the beauty nowadays when it comes to genetics is you can actually get gene testing done and often find out if you're a fast metabolizer of, we'll just say, coffee, or if you can metabolize and utilize vitamin D very well, or again, find out if you do have the BRCA gene related back to breast cancer, or it might be a different gene for a different cancer. So we're at a very amazing stage in technology and research that we can actually get more information about our genetics, and we can also influence our environment a lot more than we ever could before. Now, changing our lifestyle and what we're being exposed to, whether or not it's through what we're eating, our quality of our air, how much exercise we're doing, are we getting good sleep? These types of things can help lower our risk of developing disease and illnesses, but it doesn't erase the genetic factor altogether. And I think that's an important distinction, because a lot of people think if they're super healthy, they'll never get a disease. And as much as that would be great to say that that's what always happens, it's not always the case. And getting sick doesn't mean that you failed in any way at all. Sometimes we are just unfortunate. Sometimes those interactions that happen with the body don't go to plan. And there's nothing that we could have done to stop that from happening, no matter how healthy, in quotes, our lifestyle may appear to be. Now, chronic stress is more powerful than we realize. If there's one thing that I think we underestimate the most when it comes to our health, it's how much chronic stress has an effect on it. Not the obvious stress. So we all have those stresses, those constant sort of background stresses that happen throughout the day that we live with every day. Juggling work, kids, aging parents, finances, relationships, all of these things, household responsibilities, deadlines. Maybe we're always feeling like we're just on. When these stresses add up and they become chronic, in that we're having all of these happening all of the time, and we're not getting our nervous system to be able to calm down and feel safe and drop back into that parasympathetic state, when we stay in these heightened states of stress, that's when it influences our levels of inflammation. They start to go up. Our immune function starts to plummet. Our digestion takes a hit. Our sleep may be affected. We might not be able to fall asleep or stay asleep or get that deep REM sleep. Our hormones are affected, which then will affect our blood sugar and how we metabolize sugar in the body. Our recovery from an illness or an injury can be affected as well. A client was saying to me the other day that they had some family issues happening that were really troubling her. She was having a lot of anxiety. She was feeling very stressed. And as a result of that, she wasn't digesting her food very well. She wasn't eating as much. She was losing weight. She constantly had thoughts running through her head. As we just said, all of those things were taking a hit because of a stressful situation that was happening that she thought was going to be a short period of time that has stretched out to a longer period of time. And I myself can definitely relate to this. When my mum was diagnosed with illness many years ago, I lost a lot of weight. I wasn't eating. I was super stressed. I had young kids at the time, trying to run a business, raise a family, still be there for my mum. She's constantly going in and out of hospital, that sort of fear of the unknown. All of these things really played havoc on my system. I picked up more illnesses. I got sick more often. I wasn't recovering from when I was exercising. I did get more injuries during that time. Definitely had high inflammation happening as well. So all of these things I'm sure we can relate to. Maybe we've experienced it sometime in our lives, or we've had a friend or family member. And this doesn't mean that stress causes every illness, but it does remind us that managing our stress and having strategies to manage our stress isn't a luxury. It needs to be part of our everyday health care. And if you've listened to my recent episode on connection and how important connection is, you'll know that it's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and I want to get that word out there. And that a lot of the research is consistently showing that people with stronger social relationships live longer and experience better physical and mental health for the duration of their lives. The Harvard study of adult development found that the quality of our relationships is one of the strongest predictors of healthy aging. So having this connection influences the level of stress that we are experiencing. If we have this connection, it can help lower inflammation, improve our mood, improve our heart health, lower our risk of developing illnesses by helping to boost immunity, and even helping our brain health. And as we were saying before, health isn't just about what we put into our bodies, it's also our environment, where we live, who we surround ourselves with. These all make a difference. And touching on connection, we have to look at the flip side of loneliness. We often think of loneliness being more of an emotion, something we're feeling a little bit lonely, but it's also a psychological state. The US Surgeon General has described loneliness as a major public health challenge, with evidence linking chronic social isolation to higher rates of heart disease, depression, anxiety, dementia, and premature death. When we feel disconnected, our bodies can behave as though we're under threat. That's when we get stuck in that sympathetic state, that fight or flight state. Our stress hormones stay elevated. Our sleep suffers. We have high levels of inflammation. Our digestion is not as good. This is when we may experience more bloating, tummy upsets, those types of things. And again, this isn't about blame. It's about recognizing that relationships are a genuine part of health. And when we don't have them, our health is affected. So the more quality relationships we can build, the better. And if you listen to my connections episode, which I'll link in the show notes, our connections are our friends and our family, yes, but they're small interactions we have every day with the cashier at the coffee shop, with the cashier at the supermarket, if you're lucky enough to get one nowadays, with the person that's walking their dog down the street, or even with your pets at home. Just patting those pets is creating that connection. It's releasing oxytocin, our feel-good love hormone, which again helps lower inflammation in the body, boost mood, increase focus, all of those good things. Now, one of the things that fascinates me the most is when I was learning about the blue zones, and again, I'll link back to the blue zone episode, they focus a lot on purpose. People who wake up with something meaningful to contribute tend to live longer lives. And this is part of the blue zones and why they have a higher number of octogenarians. I never say that word correctly, but people that live over 100, this is one of the common factors, people having purpose. And purpose doesn't have to mean that you have to work and run a business or go to a full-time job by any means. It could mean that you're volunteering. It could be gardening, looking after grandchildren. Your purpose could be to create art, to help and mentor, feeling needed and useful. Purpose gives us a reason to keep moving forward. And that's incredibly powerful for our health, both on a mental and physical side. The other thing I want to touch on is that trauma also plays a big part in our health. And a lot of the time when it comes to trauma, we often think when a traumatic experience ends, let's say you had a car accident, you've had the car accident, you've recovered, we think once the event has happened, it's done, we move on. But trauma can be another piece of the puzzle. Whether it's from something that happened in childhood, it may be grief, chronic stress, a significant life event change. All of these experiences that can create trauma, and we've got physical, emotional, mental, different types of trauma, they shape our nervous system. And I know for one, I definitely never appreciated the effect of trauma, and I would always make my trauma appear small. So I've shared this story before when I was out running one morning a number of years ago now, probably about 6 years ago. I was physically attacked and grabbed by a male, and when it happened, he tried to grope me and grab me, and I was able to fend him off, and I ran home and I told my husband, and I was like, oh, well, I've fended them off and I've run away. In my mind, I minimized that traumatic event, thinking, well, it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a whole lot worse. But I was strong enough to push the attacker off me. And although I did experience bruising and things, I did minimize the event because it was something that I could walk away from. And what I learned from that experience is that there was trauma and consequences from that experience that have stayed with me to this day. And I was sharing that with a friend the other day, that even I won't run in the dark, and I won't run at the time when I was grabbed. It was about 7 a.m. The sun was kind of just coming up. It wasn't dark, but it wasn't full-blown daylight when there are lots of people around. So I won't run in early morning anymore. I won't run at dusk. It has to be full daylight. And if I do see a male coming towards me on the path, I will make sure that I am switched on. Again, my nervous system is alert and more aware, because I didn't have that awareness previously. And that's something that I have to work on, and I'm working on, so don't get me wrong there. But it's just an example of how we often may minimize a traumatic event and then not realize how it affects us long term. And emotional healing is just as important as the physical healing. And sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is to seek support. So after I had that incident and I did report it to the police, and we went all through that, I saw a counselor to work through it. And it's just highlighting the point that sometimes these things take a lot of time and they do stay with you. And again, it doesn't have any reflection on your mental or physical capacity. You're not weak or anything like that, but just that healing deserves attention, and that healing can take various amounts of time. And when we have these traumatic events, as this one shows, it affects my nervous system pretty much every time I still go running. And that's something that I have to work on, and building that resilience through other areas of my health supports me in my nervous system as well. And thinking about the world we live in, coming back to that environment piece, environment really affects our health, because we have things like air pollution, ultra-processed foods, microplastics. We've all heard about microplastics. There's a big push on that at the minute. Endocrine disrupting chemicals. So chemicals, it may be in your cleaning products. It can be in the foods you eat, the furniture you buy, the toys you buy your kids. Chemicals are in the clothes that we wear. So we all try our best. I know a lot of you listening in try to buy clean food, minimize those ingredients. We try to buy clothes that maybe are organic cotton. I know in our house we clean with non-chemical products. We've gone back to old school eucalyptus and vinegar and things like that. But we still are exposed to chemicals. It may be when we go out for dinner at a restaurant, we go round to a friend's house. We can't always control every environment that we're in. On top of that, we've got things like noise pollution. Again, you might not think that affects your health, but that can affect our hearing. And again, that's one of the big risk factors for developing dementia and Alzheimer's is our hearing. Sedentary jobs where we don't move, receiving constant notifications on our phones or our devices, dinging when we get a message, dinging when we get an email, ringing when there's a phone call. Our nervous system is constantly on. It's being bombarded all the time. Our bodies are dealing with challenges that previous generations simply didn't experience to this same extent. And as I said before, we can't eliminate all these environmental exposures, but we can reduce them. We can have some control over what we do. We can choose where we live and have a look at that air and the air pollution. We can put an air purifier in our house if we're worried about the amount of air pollution. We can buy whole foods instead of looking at processed foods. We can get outside and spend time in nature so that we can break up that sedentary lifestyle. We can turn our notifications off on our devices so we don't feel like we're constantly on. And we can remove a lot of that chemical exposure by swapping over our beauty products, cleaning products, all those things. So again, all these small choices add up and they definitely help, but they can't prevent everything. So at this point, you may be thinking, so does any of this actually matter? You've done this whole podcast, Kate, but I'm not feeling that I'm in control. But it absolutely does matter, and more than you realize, because the healthy eating matters, movement matters, strength training, our sleep matters, our friendships, our purpose, getting outside and spending that time in nature, managing our stress. Perhaps the biggest mindset shift is that these things aren't a guarantee that we'll never get sick. They're things that improve the quality of our lives, and they also reduce our risk of disease. Health isn't about perfection. It's about giving our bodies the best opportunity to thrive. And when we're adopting these healthy habits per se, we are giving our bodies the best opportunity that we can give it. Now, if you're someone who's experienced illness despite living a healthy lifestyle, I want you to hear this. Your diagnosis is not evidence that you've failed in any way. Our bodies are wonderfully complex. Sometimes illness happens despite our best efforts. Sometimes we've got genetics that play part of the role. Sometimes life throws us challenges we just couldn't have predicted. So don't carry any unnecessarily guilt, but celebrate everything your healthy habits have done for you. They may have helped you recover faster, maintain better muscle so you didn't lose as much muscle mass when you're unwell. They may have supported your mental health, reduced inflammation so that you didn't then get a chronic illness that continues, help you stay independent and aging well. Our healthy habits are never wasted, even when life doesn't unfold the way we hoped. So, taking away, and as we come to a close, one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years that health is much more than just our food and fitness. It is, as I said before, all those ingredients. How we move, eat, sleep, breathe, love, have those connections, laugh, have a purpose, manage stress. All of these things together are what build our health. And these pillars, as we'll say, help to create a healthy life, but they're not perfect. But when it comes to illness, it means that we will have more resilience for fighting that illness if and when it does happen. So instead of asking yourself, how can I avoid ever getting sick? Maybe ask, how can I build a life that helps me thrive when anything is thrown my way? Because ultimately, that's what our health is about. Now, if today's episode has resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Sometimes the healthiest thing we can do is to let go of the pressure to be perfect. Sometimes it's about finding balance. And as we said at the start of this podcast, we can do all those healthy things and we still pick up a virus. It's not foolproof, but it means that we can recover quicker. We can have lower levels of inflammation so we don't get a secondary illness after that. All of these pieces of the puzzle come in and help. Now, if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, as it really helps other people discover the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. And remember that all the choices that you make, the people you surround yourself with, and the way for you care for yourself every day do make a difference. I hope you have a healthy week, and I'll see you again next week on the podcast.